Pet Life Radio.
This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Welcome to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. This is your host, Tim Link, and I'm so glad you're joining us today. We have a really cool guest, cool book, cool topic, heartfelt topic, and just one of the most interesting books that I've seen and come across my desk for quite a while. So we're going to talk to author Sara Bader and talk to her about her latest book, The Book of Pet Love and Loss, Words of Comfort and Wisdom from Remarkable People. So we'll talk a little bit about the book, how it came about, talk about some of the quotes in there, wonderful quotes, and get down to the meat of how it was putting all this together. So everybody hang tight. We'll come back right after this commercial break. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
How many of you have pets? My hand's raised. Now think about how lucky you are to have such a sweet little pet in your life, and that pet is lucky to have you too. But unfortunately, there are countless pets out there that don't have a home to call their own. However, Bob's from Skechers is trying to change that. So we developed Bob's for dogs and cats to help pets in need. With every purchase of adorable Bob's footwear or fun, stylish apparel, or even the cutest Bob's pet accessories, Skechers makes a donation to Petco Love to help save shelter pets. And with your help, we've already saved the lives of over 1 million pets and raised over $7 million. So while you're getting style and comfort with features like Skechers' famous memory foam cushioning, you're also helping to save an adorable pet in need and helping another lucky owner be connected with a future best friend and companion, because happiness is having a loving pet by your side. Find Bob's at a Skechers store, Skechers.com, select Petco locations, or wherever stylish footwear is sold.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Joining me now is author Sara Bader. Talking about her latest book, The Book of Pet Love and Loss, Words of Comfort and Wisdom from Remarkable People. Sara, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's a pleasure having you on board, and once again, it's a fabulous book. I want you to tell us a little bit about the book and how it all came about.
The book came about actually through personal experience, which I feel like many books do. I lost my cat in 2012, and I had been prepared for her passing because she had been sick for some time, but I was absolutely wrecked after she died, and I was really surprised by how leveled I was. And I looked for something that I could read that would help me at the time. My concentration wasn't great. My appetite wasn't great. And I just wanted these small installments of what I call in the book literary nourishment, just these little installments that I could kind of dip in and out of and get solace from. And so I looked for them, and I found a few, and in the form of quotations from different memoirs and letter collections. And I sort of held them close. And then I thought, you know what? There should be a book out there of these. And there wasn't. So I wrote one.
There you go. Love it. Love the opportunity. And obviously condolences on the loss of your cat. But, as always, our animals bring out the best in us. And they definitely are our teachers and our healers. And obviously your kitty cat did that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. She also turned me into a cat person single-handedly. So, yeah.
Well, it could be like me where I, one feral cat shows up and I decide to take care of it. Next thing I know, I got 13 of them that I've had to trap, neuter, and release, and they all chose to stay. So you become a cat person whether you want to or not, which is actually a very good thing.
Yes, it's a beautiful thing.
Yes. So, putting together the book, obviously, it's a heartfelt, serious topic. I know all of our listeners, as well as myself, and of course you have gone through a loss of a furry finned or feathered family member, as trying to deal with that grief and understand it, those type of things. When you were doing your search on all this, what were you hoping for? What were you looking for? Just some solace and help you through that healing process, or was it more of an aha moment when you found something that sort of clicked?
I think I was looking for just recognition that other people had felt the way I felt, because it felt so overwhelming and so surprisingly overwhelming. I just wasn't prepared for, the loss of appetite, the loss of concentration, the sort of deep well of despair that I found myself in, that I think I was looking for a community of other people who had been through it. So voices from the past, but also the present, from literary figures and musicians and artists and cultural figures in general. And I went back 200 years of people who had been through the experience and sort of could light the way for me, because I felt like I was pretty lost and mired within it.
The thing about the book, I mean, as everybody picks up a copy of the book of Pet Love and Loss, as you read through it, you got short, wonderful quotes from famous and somewhat, not as famous people and celebrities in there. Then you also have these wonderful little sort of short passages, I'll call them, these short little tidbits by people like Jane Goodall and Amy Tan of the Joy Luck Club and John Steinbeck. And what struck me was these are little concise tidbits that help with that healing process, but also the fact that everybody goes through this. It doesn't matter if you're a celebrity, an author, a writer, or just the next door neighbor. We all, if we love animals, which everybody listening here does, obviously, goes through this. And how do you heal, and how do you actually go through that whole grieving process?
Yeah, I think it was important. I first set out to do a quotation collection just of quotes. And then as the project developed, I realized that I was finding out a lot of information about certain stories that I felt badly knowing and not sharing. It just felt like I couldn't hold on to it myself. So I ended up as an interstitial creating these short, not quite essays, but, like 300-word compressed stories about a couple dozen different figures in the book. And then it turns out that I feel like as you're walking through the quotes, it's sort of, I liken it almost to when you're driving on a scenic path and there's a scenic overlook. You can kind of drive off and take a moment and read about this one person's life, like John Steinbeck's or Georgia O'Keeffe's or Raymond Chandler's. And then you sort of get back on the road and you're back in the quotes. So there's a pacing there that I think ended up working well.
The thing I loved about it also is the book is well put together. I'll give your editors big kudos for that, and yourself for putting it all together, because you have these quotes intermingled into the pages. You have these brief little stories or tidbits of people and their experiences with animals. And then in the back, you have this wonderful little source, this little introduction table that people can scan and maybe find someone that a topic or a individual that they personally like or enjoy or have some connection with. They can find out what that particular person had to say about animals in their life and the loss of them.
Yeah, those sources in the back were really important to me. I really have a hard time with quotes that aren't sourced. It drives me crazy. So I really took time to source all the quotes and let people know where they came from so they can go back to those original sources. And like you said, explore more about either someone they love or someone they just met in the book and want to learn more about.
Right. And so when you put together the sources, you said it was important. Did you find it important from just your skill set, obviously being an editorial background and publishing many articles and books in the past, but also did you find it sort of a healing process as well, keeping that all organized and realize that people can take a look at maybe some of their favorite people and their quotes?
Yes, definitely. It felt very methodical and meditative. Yes. So yeah, it felt really good to kind of organize it. And I also found other material while doing that. So if I found a beautiful quote by like Raymond Chandler and I went to his letter collection to try to track down that particular quote, I found myself in the middle of all of his letters. And then I found another quote by him. So each time I tracked a source, it led me to another piece of text that went back into the mosaic that I was trying to build. So it was almost like a cyclical process. It was very satisfying.
I love that. I love that. And because this, when I first took a look at the book, obviously it struck me on a lot of different levels. And you're right. I don't know if I'd say there's not a lot of books on pet love and loss, but it's more like, what are the ones that resonate with you? What are the ones that actually help you heal? And most of them get a little bit more into detail, maybe a scientific approach to animals making their transitions, these type of things, which are fine. But this one hit home the fact that I could really just find particular quotes that really resonated with me.
Yeah, I wanted the reader to be able to read it cover to cover, or if they just didn't feel like it, to be able to open it up anywhere in the book and spend some time with a few spreads or even one spread, whatever they wanted, whatever they needed. So it was important for me to sort of not to give the reader some flexibility in terms of what they wanted to read and in what order, really. I mean, it is set up structurally to sort of walk you through the arc of the experience, but I also think you can really open it up anywhere and just experience a spread or 10 spreads or 20 or, yeah, it's meant to be read either way.
Absolutely. And a hint to your publishers here, I don't know if it's in the works or not, but if it isn't and it gets done, I want 10% of the take. And my idea is, why not turn this into a nice little calendar, a motivational healing type calendar, sort of each quote each day.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. So I'll only ask for 10% of the cut if it happens there, Sarah. When doing the research, let's talk about the research part of it, because when to someone that hasn't done something like this, publishing books and writing books, we're always looking for quotes or experiences or things that sort of may resonate with the reader of the book. But you had to go through a lot of different material, a lot of research. How'd you go about that whole process of determining, A, where do I find all this information, and B, how do I trim it down? Because I'm sure there are piles of thousands that you could have done. How did you go about doing that?
I mean, it was somewhat organic in the sense that I sort of had a list of figures that I knew were very attached to their animals. It was a little tricky because just because someone was attached to their animals didn't necessarily mean that they wrote about that attachment. And just because they wrote about that attachment didn't necessarily mean that they wrote about pet loss. So sort of finding that sweet spot where it's somebody that is a cultural figure, either past or present, who has an attachment to an animal companion, who took the time to either write about it or to talk about it, and then moved into the conversation about pet loss. It ended up being, I have to say, kind of challenging. And I realized maybe that's why the book didn't exist, because there was a lot of digging. And I also realized that there's a lot of shame. I mean, this is not something new, but it was reinforced through research that there's so much shame and stigma that's connected to the intensity of the feelings, that a lot of the quotations in the book were buried in letter collections and diaries and notebooks that were published, but some were out of print and some were hard to find, and some weren't indexed. So you would go to a writer's collection of letters and there were plenty of names indexed in the back, but their pet might not be one of them, which was interesting since the pet might have been the closest relationship they had. So I found myself sometimes having to read through, all the letters, many of which had nothing to do with their pets, to try to find that sort of one gem about their animal that also might address pet loss. So it was very specific, the search. I have to say I'm a real tried and true researcher. I really love the process. So for me, it was like a total treasure hunt.
I love that. Well, it is a personal experience, that you go through that whole healing process of the loss of an animal and understand it. I work with clients on a daily basis that handle, how do you deal with your grief of losing an animal in your life? And it's different for each person. But as humans, I know we tend to doubt ourselves, beat ourselves up over it. Did I do enough? Did I not do enough? Did I do it too soon? Did I not do it too soon? And so that's all part of that healing process. And it sounds like by you doing what you love doing and are very skilled at doing, this helped with that process.
Definitely. Yeah, it was very therapeutic to write. Absolutely. I felt like even when it was challenging and I was looking for something that was hard to find and it took me a while to find it, it was so rewarding when I did. And the entire process, research to me is like almost like scuba diving. I love going down there and looking.
Ooh, look what I found. Ooh, look at that fish. Look at that fish.
Exactly. Bringing it up to the surface and putting it in the boat. Yep.
I love it.
I mean, not the fish, but like so
right.
whatever.
I understand. Was there a particular person that you did you did the research on, you found the quote or found the brief story that they shared about their animals? Was someone that was a surprise that you didn't know they were that much of an animal lover or that a particular animal had touched their life at such a deep impact?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I feel like there were a lot of surprises. A lot of the surprises came in the form of not necessarily knowing, like, I didn't have a background. I hadn't spent a lot of time with Raymond Chandler's work. I didn't know him as a person that well until I started working on this book. And his writings about his very imperious, very bossy cat, Taki, are some of the most lyrical, funny, entertaining writings about animals in general, but also about pet loss. And those come from his letters. He was an active letter writer throughout his life. So a lot of the surprises, I think, just came from getting to know some of these figures that were less familiar to me because I didn't have a lot of experience with their work, and then kind of drilling deep into their personal life, which was interesting to get to know them that way and not necessarily first through their work, and then to get to know their animals, and then to find out that Raymond Chandler was a total devoted cat dad for almost 20 years. But there were other, like Helen Keller. I knew that animals played a part in her life. She writes so beautifully about what those relationships felt like to her. So I feel like there were these lovely, beautiful surprises almost everywhere. I think that's what made the research so exhilarating, because I was learning so much about these people.
Absolutely. Animals are a common denominator is what I find, as you may meet someone, it could be a celebrity or could not be, but you meet someone and you look for commonalities that you have, and there are some things that usually pop up like, do you have children, or what neighborhood, or where did you grow up at, all these things. But animals always seem to tick the biggest box. Because boy, if you find someone that has an animal or used to have one or loves animals, you've got a bond automatically.
Yeah, it's total glue. I totally agree. Yeah, you could be sitting next to anyone you like, a stranger, and if you start talking about your pets, it's like it could be hours.
Absolutely. So skip the talk about weather, because we'd always go there. Talk about animals. That's the first thing you should be asking.
Yeah.
And I love the book. When I first heard about it and received a copy, I was thinking, oh, okay, this is, we need more books, like you said, more books that help us deal with the grieving process and the loss of an animal. And then, of course, I fell in love with the quotes and the brief stories, but also these little tidbits, these little stories that are in here. They're not all about, I had this wonderful cat and I lost the cat, and here's what I went through during that time. They're just chock full of fun stories and memories and things that like just sort of resonate. I love the one on Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong wrote a little ditty about his dogs. Now, of course, they're schnauzers. And anybody that's listened to this show for many, many years, we're schnauzer folks over here at my place. That resonates. So it caught my eye. And I love the little story. It's just a fun little story about how his male dogs, his schnauzers, Trumpet and Trinket, sing and do a little duet every time together. And it immediately resonated with me because I've got, as I mentioned, two schnauzers, but they also sing. Whenever they hear a siren or a low-flying jet, it's singing time. So we've got the whole family sings along with the schnauzers, and then they get their singing treat for their wonderful tune that they just sung to us.
That's really sweet. I love that. I love that quote as well.
And that's the thing, another great thing about the book you put together here, it does help you heal. It does talk about some of the loss of animals, and we all see that we're on the same level. We're all on the same playing field. We all go through this grieving process. But then you top that off with just fun stories that like, oh, I know that one, or that resonates with me, or my dogs do that. I didn't know any other dogs did that. These type of things that really I think is part of that healing process.
Yeah, I found that really healing. And I found it also, I love that even people that I'm familiar with, John Steinbeck is one of my favorite writers. I found that researching him and writing about him as one of the people that I sort of build out in the book, it feels like I learned different things about him and Charlie, even though he's written about Charlie. So even the people who are familiar, I feel like I found new things about them that I didn't know, which was fun.
Which was fun. And then, of course, it's chock full of photos of them and their pets, people like Robert Frost, obviously, him and his dog, these type of things. And that sort of ties it all together as well.
Yeah, Robert Frost and his dog Gilly had a really sweet, really close relationship. And Gilly just was really tuned into him, and they just communicated like almost wordlessly. It was really beautiful.
Wow, that's wonderful. Well, everybody hang tight. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Then we'll come back and talk to Sara Bader a little bit more about her book, the book of Pet Love and Loss, Words of Comfort and Wisdom from Remarkable People. Also want to delve a little bit more into detail with Sara about her writing process. And not only put in together this book, but just everything that she does. So everybody hang tight. We'll come back right after this commercial break. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
Take a bite out of your competition. Advertise your business with an ad in Pet Life Radio podcasts and radio shows. There is no other pet-related media that is as large and reaches more pet parents and pet lovers than Pet Life Radio. With over 7 million monthly listeners, Pet Life Radio podcasts are available on all major podcast platforms, and our live radio stream goes out to over 250 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, Odyssey, TuneIn, Stitcher, and other streaming apps. For more information on how you can advertise on the #1 pet podcast and radio network, visit PetLifeRadio.com/advertise today.
Let's talk pets
Let's talk pets
on Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Continue our conversation with author Sara Bader and her book, the Book of Pet Love and Loss, Words of Comfort and Wisdom from Remarkable People. Now, Sara, we talked about your loss and the healing process and how the book came about. Walk us through the actual writing of the book and putting it through. I know I highlighted a little bit how difficult I can imagine it was to just decide which one of these stories and quotes and pictures and everything that makes this book so wonderful. How do you sort through all that? But how is that process from the time you thought, hey, I need to do this because this is something that I think other people will enjoy and help them with their healing? How'd you go about determining what type of book it would be?
That's a really good question. I mean, it took a lot of like different iterations. It was originally 7 chapters and not 5, and the stories were much briefer. So it sort of developed over time organically, but basically my approach was sort of to go out into the world and find as many excerpts that I found to be beautiful as possible. And I don't know if this is like too logistical, but I will just go for it and say I put them all in a spreadsheet and organized them by theme. So I had a sense of, the whole first part of the book is really about pet love. I didn't want the book to be just this kind of sad book about pet loss. So it was really important for me to spend a lot of time with the joy of the bond and the connections. So that was part of the research. I put all the quotes and excerpts I could find about pet love or loss in a massive spreadsheet and organized them all by theme. And then I started to kind of synthesize those themes and refine them. And it was 7 chapters originally, and then I refined it to 5 chapters. And I mean, it was just almost like very Luddite in the sense that I like wrote out every quote that I found really special on an index card, which were hundreds. And I sort of worked with them and tried to find where they belonged in the book. And then of all those quotes, I wanted to include photographs of 24 of the people. So I needed to fit those particular people within the chapter that they belong. So if someone was talking about prolonged grief, which is the 4th chapter, I wanted to find someone who could talk about that, where there was a quote that they've said, but also a photograph of them with the dog that they're talking about. So there was a lot. It was a very intricate process. It's funny when you look at it, it might seem kind of like this very kind of straightforward book, but it actually like a ton of puzzling to put together. So I don't know if that answers your question.
That's perfect. And that's the fascinating part about what you said. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, that's I love the process that you went through because, on a high level, someone maybe who's not a writer or is an inspiring writer, these type of things, you think, okay, well, these are wonderful, wonderful quotes, but okay, I go online or I go to the library. People go to the library still, folks, and you do your research and you find 200 quotes and you put them in a book. Voila. No, it's not that simple. You got to find the right ones. And as you said, you got to organize them. You got to put them, it doesn't make sense to spread one topic into all 4 different chapters because it doesn't fit the need and in the message you're trying to get across.
Yeah, like Billie Holiday there's a beautiful photograph of Billie Holiday and her dog, Mister, who is described as a boxer, but also looks like a pit bull, which is interesting. But she describes him as a boxer and biographers do too. But her and Mister it's a photograph of them in her dressing room. And it's a really lovely shot, beautiful portrait of the two of them. But she doesn't really talk about pet loss. She only talked about pet love. So she really needed to be in that first section. So there were certain people that kind of needed to be in certain sections based on what they were inspired to write about in terms of their relationship to animals. So there was a lot of kind of moving around and making sure that the people I chose were in the right places throughout the book.
Yeah, you did a great job of that. And like I said, the sources section of it, as I mentioned earlier in the show, helps tie that together. It helps locate where each of these sections or each of these quotes or each of these people are located, which is fantastic. Now, obviously, you'd mentioned that it was sort of what kicked this off was your incredible loss of a Snowflake, your kitty cat. And she made her transition in 2012. We're in 2023. So did the epiphany start right after her transition, or was there a lot of time in between that before you decided to tackle this? And then once you did, how long was that process?
That's a really good question. I think I searched for the book and hoped that it was out there because that would have been so much easier. But I didn't find it. And I did find a few quotes that really tethered me and were really helpful. But I would say like pretty soon after, like while in the midst of it, I was thinking like there needs to be a book on this. Like I need this book badly. So I didn't really get very involved in the process, but I started the collection process. It was sort of a slow gathering. So when I would find something, I would gather it into a document and I just sort of started building that list. And then in 2014, I started working at Phaidon, the publisher. And I think I had like, a spreadsheet and the sort of the start of the project. But my time at Phaidon was very busy and I was editing other authors' books, which I love to do. So I was that got put on hold a little bit, but it was always in my mind and I continued to kind of slowly build it. And then so it wasn't sort of ongoing, but it was always sort of part of my life since I would say, losing Snowflake.
Wow, that's fantastic. And so you're editor at the publishing house who ultimately ended up publishing the book. Now you would think, okay, well, she's got an inside track on this, but that's not the case because I'm assuming the fine folks over there viewed you as an editor.
Well, so I published the book with Simon & Schuster, but I was an editor over at Phaidon. So the publisher who published the book of Pet Love and Loss was a different one that I worked for as an editor. I'm not sure if that helps clarify.
Yeah, no, that's great clarification on that. So when you went to, we'll say, pitch the book out there and to the agents and to the publishing houses, did they find it easier to take a look at it because you have such a fine editing and background in the publishing industry, or was it more of a little more difficult than you expected?
That's such a good question. I think the benefit I have is that I've helped a lot of authors write book proposals, and I love writing book proposals, which I know a lot of people do not like writing book proposals.
What, Sarah?
I know. I love tracking original sources, and I love writing book proposals, both of which I think a lot of people don't enjoy. So I had written a lot of book proposals, just collaborating with authors who were pitching their own ideas. So I just felt excited about the idea of bringing all of that to my own project. And I kind of knew what question, like I wanted to be very thorough and I knew what questions, because I was an editor, at a publishing house and I'd been in those meetings where they decide like, yeah, this title could fit on our publishing list. I knew sort of what questions might come up and what I needed to be clear about. So I think in that way, my editorial background was helpful, but I don't think it swayed whether the publisher decided to publish it or not. But I don't know.
Right. Well, the proposal, you're right. Many, I'll raise my hand on this, writing the proposal, not so much fun. But striking the right accord, I think that, the right chord on this, it's the key because face it, if you don't have a good proposal,
Yes.
it tells us about why would I want to publish this book? What
Yes.
makes it different? How's the competition out there? Who is this person that's trying to pitch me this book? If you don't have all your ducks in a row in that proposal, then you don't even get a thank you letter anymore. You just, it sort of disappears into the ether. So you've got to have a solid book proposal.
Yeah. And what I always tell authors, which I found really helpful for myself, is if you can't write a really good book proposal, you probably shouldn't write the book. Because books are a long journey and the book proposal allows you to sort of sort out your structure and it's going to change and it'll refine, but it kind of gives you a chance to decide whether you want to live with this material for, several years and be really with it every day. And so I find book proposals very helpful that way in the sense that you have a chance to sort of, it's like almost dating the subject. You can kind of just spend time with it and see how it works for you and and if you can't explain it in a book proposal, then you have bigger issues. So I think it's a really good litmus test, actually.
Yeah, I do too. I think it really helps you determine, I know as a writer and as an author, you have an idea for a book, you want to get your message out there, you think it's important, you think people will enjoy it or get the message that you're trying to bring across. You're so close to the situation that it's often hard to sort of decipher. If I had no clue about this topic or this person or books in general, why in the world would I want to spend my money buying this book?
No, you really have to make it stand out and be convincing and most of all, really convincing to yourself, I think, because you're the one who's going to be spending all the time with the material.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Sara, when people pick up a copy of the book of Pet Love and Loss, words of comfort and wisdom from remarkable people, as they look through the book, as they read the book, they read the quotes and the stories, what do you hope they get from it?
I hope that they get a feeling of community and that they are not alone, that many people have gone through this, and that Jackson Galaxy, actually, who read a copy of the book, summarized it in such a beautiful, perfect way. He said, while there's no cure for grief, there's great comfort in kinship. And I feel like that's what this book is it's kinship, really, and being able to sort of sit with all of these voices, past and present, and know you're part of a bigger community of like-minded people who loved their animals fiercely.
Absolutely. Beautiful message. And that's a beautiful sentiment. And the book, tied that all together lovingly. And I will say one more plug for the book is it's a small size, sort of not pocket size, but smaller size book, hardcover. And in the front has the very first page is this wonderful little section called In Loving Memory Of. And I remember books in the olden days, which were gifted to people that we love, family members, our children, whatever it may be. And it was always signed. And as a matter of fact, my not only signed with the signature of the author, but it was dedicated and said, here, I'm presenting this book to you. And I remember my father-in-law at one point, it didn't matter what book you sent him. He loved the books, but he refused to read it unless it was signed, that, hey, I think you'll enjoy this book, or, hey, I learned something from this book, or this could help you through this process. And this book has that nice little section where that can be dedicated and passed down through generations.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people don't know what to give someone who's just lost a beloved animal companion. And I love the idea that at the beginning of the book, if your friend has lost, their cat Ziggy or dog, Ziggy.
Right.
If someone has lost a sweet animal named Ziggy, you can say in loving memory and you can write Ziggy in the front. And it becomes sort of an offering in remembrance of Ziggy. But it also the space is large enough to put other animals' names over time. So it feels a little bit like just an offering to one animal or many animals, but hopefully a perennial offering.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I will say this, Sara, that I'm blessed to have many books come across my desk, and I read as many as I can. But my library and my shelves are limited on how many I keep. I usually donate them to a local rescue group so they can enjoy them and sell them, so they can help their thrift stores, etc. But this book, it will be on the shelf. It will be in my permanent collection because I just love it so much. I love what the message and how you put it together. And it's one of those books you can, whenever you're feeling a little bit down or you just need a pick-me-up or a fun story, you can pull it right off the shelf, and it's as fresh today as it was the first time you took a look at it.
That makes me so happy, and I'm so glad.
Absolutely. So everybody go out and pick up a copy of the book. It's the Book of Pet Love and Loss, Words of Comfort and Wisdom from Remarkable People. It's by author and editor Sara Bader. Sara, congratulations on a fantastic job, and I'll look forward to hearing more from you somewhere down the road.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, we're coming to the end of the show today. I want to thank everyone for listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. I want to thank the producers and sponsors for making this show possible. If you have any questions, comments, ideas, or people you want to hear from on the show, please drop us a line. You can go to PetLifeRadio.com, and we'll be glad to answer your questions, entertain your comments, and bring on the people you want to hear from most. And while you're there, check out all the other wonderful shows and hosts. It's a cornucopia of fun, and it's all full of animals, so it makes it even better. So everybody, write a great story about the animals in your life, and who knows, you may be the next guest on Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Have a great day.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.